I intend to make a series of videos about my little workshop here in Harrison, Tennessee, and I'll show you some jigs that I've made, some tools, and some little shop tips that I offer out. So first thing I'm going to do is kind of take you around my shop. Talk's cheap, but I'll show you a little bit of what I've got around here. Here's a sign that my old buddy Slim Johnson's painted on a banjo head for me, and here's a picture of my labor rates. My little shop here is small. It's probably I don't know, 12 by 20 or something like that. It's not very large. And I've got quite a bit of stuff in here and outside in the other part of my garage, but I do some wood turning and mainly work on some musical instruments, guitars and banjos and so forth. So I just wanted to show you where I'm coming from. I didn't clean the place up. Didn't want to look like it was a museum or something. It's a workshop, and it's dusty and got wood chips around on stuff, and stuff's not really organized sometimes like it should be. But got a lot of stuff in here, and here's my workbench. I got several different vices around. Here's one of those Stuart McDonald vices that I've got mounted on a swing arm. This workbench started out as a cabinet somebody gave me years ago, and I found a piece of a tabletop actually at an antique store and cut it down and made a piece to go on top of it. It's out of some maple. It's worked out real well. I will show you my little deal that I use. This Stumac vise. I bought this vise several years ago, and I can pull this thing out here and to where I want it. And when I'm building the neck, a lot of times I'll working on the neck, even the fingerboard or whatever. I can pull this thing around here. I can take this vise and stabilize it where I want to hold it, and clamp a neck in here, work on it. Takes a little bit of finagling around. I've got some different attachments that I can put on here. Then clamp in my vise here. I can turn this around here and stabilize this thing and get it where I can work on it. I use this thing if I'm making a nut for a guitar or whatever. I got this little vise and I made some Delrin jaws and put in it. If I'm working on a nut or whatever, something small, it puts it up at close to eye level, comfortable position for me to work on it. I've got this this neck holding jig here that I can put a neck in it, and I've got one here when I got a full size guitar. Sometimes I'll slide it back there, but this is a handy spot to work on it because you can get to it very easily. Of course, I've got several different lights here on my workbench I can turn on to give more light. Got a big 4-foot LED light up overhead. And I've got a lot of junky looking stuff laying around here, but it's all for a purpose. This thing here, it's kind of weird looking, I know, but I can take a guitar or a banjo and turn it up on its side and put it down in there, and that kind of helps stabilize it. Here's a little string winder that I use. That came from the Walmart. Here's something that I came up with on my own here. It's just a simple thing that got numbers on it and nails and little holes in it. And I can, if I got a loop-in string off a banjo, I can hang it on these nails. And if I got a guitar string, I hang it on this. Here's something that I learned from watching some videos of a guy named Woodford that's from Canada, and he put me wise to using this lighter fluid. It's strong enough to take some stuff off of an instrument to clean it with, and it's not strong enough to affect the finish on one. And it works pretty good. Sometimes you get these pick guards that you take off and it leaves that residue and it's hard to get off. And that does a pretty good job sometimes, but my background is working in an automobile body shop for quite a bit of my life, and we used a product called wax and grease remover. And here's a can of it over here. I've had this for quite a while. I don't use much of it, and it's probably expensive nowadays, the way everything else is, but this is good. Sometimes that will do a better job of taking off glue and stuff than the lighter fluid will, and it's also not strong enough to hurt the finish. Here are some scraper blades that I've made out of different pieces of steel, old saw blades. Here's a light that I made several years ago. You could buy these things back then. Probably won't be available now, but it's a little fluorescent type light. And I rigged it up and took the thing apart and wired it up where I can put it down inside of a guitar. And here's some mirrors that I use. That's just a piece of plastic mirror. I bought a whole sheet of that stuff at one time and made some stuff out of it. Masking tape. I got several different kinds of masking tape. When I worked in the body shop, you could buy masking tape for 50 cents a roll or cheaper. Now it's very expensive, and some of it is good and some of it's not so good. I've got some different kinds of it, and it all has a purpose for something. I use some two-sided tape sometimes. Two-sided duct tape is pretty handy for mounting something, even on a lathe. I've used it on there. And the electrical tape, I've learned to use electrical tape to tape up a fingerboard on a guitar when I'm putting frets in it, and it holds up better than masking tape. There's some strapping tape. When you're putting binding on, sometimes you need a little bit stronger tape to pull that binding up, and that works pretty well. Here's my dogwood whomping stick. I made that thing several years ago. That dogwood's some tough stuff. That thing's been really handy for me. I've used it a lot. Oh, my Fordham tool. I've had Dremel tools. I've got several Dremel tools and knockoffs and stuff. But a friend of mine that I knew from the body shop days, his dad was a carver, and he carved some intricate stuff. And he sold me this Dremel tool. This Fordham tool. And that's been at least 30 years ago. And that thing's still going. I had to put a new shaft on it, and I've had to put hand pieces on it, and some bearings at one time or another. But as far as a Dremel type tool, that thing's hard to beat. And I've got it rigged up. It originally had a foot control on it, but I wired up a dimmer switch like you use on the old light bulbs, you know. And I can control the speed of it with this. I never could get used to using the foot control thing with the Fordham tool. It just didn't feel right to me. Let's talk about lighting. I've got LED light bulbs in here for the most part, and they put off a good light. It's hard to get too much light in a place where you're working. This is an old metal lathe. It's a cheap one. Came from Harbor Freight. A friend of mine died, and I was able to buy it from his wife after he died. And it's opened up a new avenues of work for me. I've been able to do things that I never could do before that. Some homemade clamps, cam clamps that I built. Here's a bunch of them that I used. This is my pin router. It's a handy tool. That was a shopsmith deal, and I've used it to make bridges and so forth. Now I don't want you to get the idea I think I've got it all figured out, because I'm just learning like everyone else is working on stuff. But this kind of shows you part of what I got here and the way I do things. I've got bins and bins full of jigs and stuff that I've made through the years, and been doing this for quite a few years. Just mainly as a hobby. I don't count on it to make my living. I said it's going to be a short video, but I don't. I'm like Jamie Perkins. You get me started talking, that's hard to make a short video, I guess.